Hi everybody, it's Natalie. I'm making this video to share my experience on a 10-day Vipassana course in North Fork, California. Some of you guys know I teach yoga, so I have time to go off and do these sorts of things. And when I came back, I received lots of questions about what the experience was about, and I felt that a quick synopsis of, it was life-changing, or talking about a couple things that I learned really didn't do it justice. So I'm opening up my stream of consciousness relating to this topic and sharing it to my camera. I'm hoping to keep this pretty unedited, but as a result, I don't know how long this video is going to last. In a nutshell, the Vipassana course was a life-changing experience. It was moment by moment, add it all up. Most moments were very sad and angry and challenging for me. But as a result of those cumulative inner work, I learned a lot about myself and acquired a lot of wisdom, and I would recommend it to everyone. Initially, I was very drawn to this course for the simple reason that I knew that I had a lot of inner work to be done. And a friend of my partner's had done this course before and had radically wonderful results. And I spent a good amount of time researching online and heard lots of other people say the same thing, and just took the leap and signed up. I didn't really know what I was in for at the time. So essentially what a 10-day Vipassana course is you give up anything that can potentially be a distraction for you for 10 days, even good and healthy distractions. So you wake up at 4 a.m. every day, or you're supposed to wake up at 4 a.m. every day. They don't actually enforce it. And you have these 4 mandatory hour-long sittings every day, and lights are out at 10 o'clock. You're fed 2 vegetarian meals throughout the day, and in the evening, if you're a new student, you're allowed tea and fruit. If you're a returning student, you're only allowed tea, no milk. No secret protein and fat snuck into your evening. To say the least, is very challenging on my body. Sat a lot, sitting up straight. Surprisingly, I was able to get enough sleep most of the time, and I became quite used to being hungry. That part wasn't so much the challenge. The most challenging part for me was actually experiencing the insane amount of boredom that I experienced, because there is nothing available to distract you from it. You simply have hours and hours and hours and hours upon seated meditation, either in your own spaces or in the meditation hall. And when you're not supposed to be meditating, you are doing whatever you want. You can be walking. We had a little pond in our women's section we had a pond in the women's section, the outdoor women's section. So I spent a lot of time walking around that. You become very fascinated with the tiny details of nature. I got to see frogs. I saw a couple of turkeys, lots and lots of squirrels. I learned that squirrels make really interesting sounds. I even got to see some squirrels mating. That was a very funny time. And your whole sensory perception gets really reset. After a few days, relatively, these types of days become your new normal, and anything that used to be mundane in your everyday life suddenly becomes very stimulating, such as watching a squirrel or looking at a leaf or looking at a flower. These become your new sources of entertainment. And in that respect, it was really interesting, and I enjoyed being able to take pleasure in watching the little details within nature. So the first couple days where you're just getting acclimated, and like many other people who've experienced this type of thing. I spent my first few days very frustrated. Did not want to be there at all. I had the typical thoughts of, why am I here? This is possibly the stupidest thing I've ever done. I have made a huge mistake, and I do not want to be here. I do not want to be here. I do not want to be here. So what the Vipassana course teaches you, it's taught by this guy named Goenka. He's dead now, but every day you get 1 hour of video discourse. So it's like intellectual, not supposed to be intellectual entertainment. You're actually supposed to take what he tells you and apply it to your meditation practice and your daily practice. But I found it to be very intellectually stimulating, given I had no other stimulation. So what it really teaches you is 2 skills that you practice in meditation and hopefully can take with you into your everyday life. The main 2 skills you learn are sensitivity and awareness, kind of synonymous words in this context, and also equanimity. So what I gathered was that it's important to have sensitivity and awareness because it allows you to have access to seeing all the possibilities within your reality, whether it's an external reality like your perceptions, things that you can see outside of you, or your internal reality, such as sensations, such as hot or cold or pain or subtle sensations like tingling. Most of the time, especially like in yoga, we think of sensations as the big sensations, such as pain, such as heat, but and if you don't have these skills to maintain a broad perspective, your entire reality gets reduced to that tiny reality of pain or hot or discomfort or pleasure, which is not in and of itself a bad thing, but the whole premise of the Vipassana course is that all of our suffering is caused by our losing perception of the actual reality. So Vipassana actually means to see things as they really are. So rather than reducing your entire experience to this pain, let's say a pain in your back, you're able to also maintain awareness, broaden your perspective, and being able to also notice a subtle tingling in your face, or the air on your face, or tingling in your fingertips. So it's important to develop the skill of awareness so that while you are noticing something that is painful or a large sensation or something big happening in front of you, you can also maintain awareness of all the other things that are happening that are not necessarily taking up all of your attention. So as a result, developing your skills of collecting things to be aware of, you're able to maintain a wider perspective. Now, many people, especially in the spiritual community, already have a great sense of sensitivity there. Especially if you're empathic, you tend to feel things, you tend to feel other people's vibes, whatever you decide that means. You can feel energy, you can feel hot, you can feel cold, but sensitivity without equanimity means you're kind of at the mercy of the vibration or sensation that you're currently experiencing. So it's important to have equanimity too, so that no matter what sensation arises, you can watch it and not become consumed by it. So it's this equanimity that gives us resilience in our day-to-day life. So it's important to have both of these skills, sensitivity and equanimity. Equanimity without awareness, without sensitivity, means you're delusional. You can be equanimous but only see part of the reality, and you're really missing out on the true, real truth of the experience. And sensitivity without equanimity means you're being thrown all over the place, even though you may be aware of all the different happenings of the world. So having both of these skills is very valuable. I realized that sensitivity and equanimity were both skills that I was lacking. So it was just a lot of work for me on both fronts. But I think for many people that I know who are in the spiritual community, they have sensitivity, they can feel things, but they lack equanimity. So as a result, they're still very reactive in their external world. And the thing about this Vipassana course is you're sitting for so long, you feel things, and I think it's like the 4th or the 5th day, you have these mandatory sittings, and you're really encouraged to not move. So even if you have a thought, even if you have a sensation, you're really encouraged not to react to them whatsoever. Not to react on the physical level, as in like move, but they also teach you techniques to encourage you not to even react on a mental level. They call it a sankhara. I think the simplest way I know how to explain it without going into all the details of what a sankhara is kind of like a judgment, labeling something as good or something or as bad, because those inevitably can easily lead towards craving or aversion. If something's good, if you really like it, it's easy to develop a future craving for it. If something is bad, you can eventually start to develop an aversion towards it. So the whole point is to stop labeling these as good or bad, so that you don't develop craving or aversion, because ultimately all thoughts, all sensations fall under the natural law of impermanence. Feelings are arising and falling. Sensations are arising and falling. You may think that you can chase them and make them happen, but the reality is it's all impermanent, it's all arising, it's all falling, and things will continue to change and happen with or without your help. So rather than chasing a sensation or chasing an emotion or chasing a particular reality, it's going to arise and it's going to pass. So it teaches you not to be so reactive and to actually trust in the process and enjoy the ride, because it's really not up to you. So for that reason, it really breaks down your ego a lot. This is one thing I think I would love to explore a lot more on my, my healing journey is continuing on. So I feel the ego would be a really interesting thing to explore. So, like I said, one of the biggest things I really struggled with was boredom. And when you really have nothing left to distract yourself, you end up spending all your time either in your body or in your head. You have nowhere else to be. So sometimes when you're in your body, you're experiencing the sensations, which can be hot or cold, the air on your skin, and it can be very pleasant or unpleasant. And then you also spend a good amount of time thinking when you're not actively trying to meditate. And when you have no distractions, you can just run to the end of your logical thoughts and reach the end of your possible emotions. And so I used to have this underlying current of anxiety and anger. And I didn't really even know it was there. It was kind of just like your refrigerator running in the background. You forget that it's there, but it's there. And I kind of had this residual anger, residual anxiety underneath. And I really got to see it and take a look at it and pull it apart and recognize that a lot of the emotions and anger that I felt towards people in my life, their anger was the same as my anger. And I really didn't feel that I had the tools in many instances in my life to handle anger, to handle sadness, to handle fear and pain. And, and I'm a spiritual teacher, whatever that means. And if I don't even have the tools to handle some of these complex emotions, how can I be angry at people who had even fewer tools than I do? They only have the strategies that they have. And I wish that they had more tools to get out of their suffering, because it's really painful, because I'm feeling this pain and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. So and intellectually we know these things. Intellectually we know we shouldn't be angry. Intellectually we know we shouldn't wish pain on people. Intellectually we know we should be compassionate. But it's very different to intellectually understand something and to actually feel it within your own body. So when I started going to the deepest layers of some of my existing long-standing pain, I realized that I didn't actually wish any pain or anger on anyone, because here I was dealing with it myself, not knowing what to do with it. And my natural arrival after that was not necessarily healing, but a place of acceptance of the emotions that I was having, and also therefore an acceptance of other people's emotions, whether they're expressed or not, and an understanding that everyone is just coping with what tools that they have. So because of that, that underlying existing layer of fear and anger and sadness kind of just passed away. And I really feel that this new layer of compassion arose. And that was a very new thing for me. With anger, my attempt at compassion had always been something in the middle, which we've called pity. And pity is kind of like a cop-out. We can trick ourselves into thinking we're being compassionate, but pity is not compassion. But in those moments earlier on in my life, pity was the closest thing I knew to compassion. But that's all I got for that. I'm sure there are other layers that I don't even know about, like that refrigerator running in the background. I'm sure there's still more, but now I know that that was one layer, and now it's gone. And like many things, peace can be a temporary high. So I don't know how long I'm going to feel this peacefulness. In the meantime, I've been trying to maintain it by meditating twice a day. There's also a group I found here in Orange County. So I started going there today. It's been very helpful. But this is another thing, especially in the spiritual community. I used to not think of myself as someone who is bipolar. I mean, I don't know. I have never lived in the head of someone who is a diagnosed bipolar, but I can see elements of bipolar within myself. In the sense that I chase the high, I chase the feel-goods in my life, and sometimes even within the spiritual world, I chase the clarity, and I chase the all-knowing, and I chase this feeling of oneness, whatever I perceive that feeling of oneness to be. Connection. We can confuse the temporary feeling of connection with the feeling of oneness, and oneness is not a feeling, it just is. Oneness is. But I can't say that I know what oneness is. I didn't have any dissolving experience like a lot of people do. But I forget where I was going with this. I guess it wasn't that important. Oh yeah, so I was talking about chasing the highs and running away from the lows. I realized that I have this like real need to know everything. And I think part of it's because we haven't learned how to not know the little things in our lives. For example, if you have like a tiny little blip of an inquiry in your mind, you have your phone readily accessible and you can look it up. There was one day at the Vipassana where I didn't know what day of the week it was, and I went into like a panic, and I was desperately trying to figure out what day it was because I could not handle not knowing what day of the week it was. And that's when you realize like you're attached to this need to know the answer. So I didn't think I was a know-it-all, but you're a know-it-all if you have a need to know the answer, because part of you identifies with this knowing, being able to know or having access to knowing. And I still haven't figured that part out. And there's a high, a dopamine rush that comes with finding out the answers. It's a feeling of knowing. And we as a society are addicted to knowing the answer, which means that we're going to suffer whenever we feel a sense of uncertainty. So your phone, your Google can't predict the outcome of your future, it can't predict the outcome of you having a job or having a sense of perceived stability or having a certain amount of money. And yet our happiness depends on it, but it's not something that we can control. So we temporarily feed ourselves with knowledge and information from the internet, and it gives us this temporary high, this feeling of security, because we know the answer, or we have this some sense of certainty, even though even that in and of itself is not actually certain, because there's plenty of things on the internet that are wrong, and there are things on the internet that are true today that won't be true tomorrow. So nothing is actually set in stone, but we can trick ourselves into thinking that it is. I also notice that I always feel a sense of high, like a high feeling, when I feel a sense of stability, when I feel a sense of peace, when I feel like I have enough money in the bank. And that also is something that is largely out of my control. You can get a large bill or some unexpected expense can come up. We just got kicked out. We're going to be getting kicked out of our this apartment that I love very much, out of our control. And if we're clinging to it, it's going to cause us pain. Does that mean that we shouldn't have desires? No. And I'm not going to go into that in this video. But in essence, the degree to which we identify with a thing or a thought or a belief is the degree to which we will suffer when that thing, thought, belief gets taken away. So this kind of forces you into that space, and you get to really see what you're attached to. And I don't know if there's an answer to really detaching from it, but I believe that the first step in detaching from any thought, belief, system, or physical item, or anything really in your external reality or internal reality, is to shift your perspective to the identifier and shift from the identifier to the observer. So there's I like to imagine there being multiple seats in my mind. And usually when I run off with a particular thought, or I start developing an obsession or a craving for one thing or an aversion for another, I've identified or disidentified with a particular, or I guess it would be identified with a particular identity or thing or belief. And when that happens, I've shifted out of the perspective of the observer. And if you can step back and take a bird's eye view on how you're reacting, how you're perceiving, how you're identifying or not identifying, then you're going to naturally develop a more peaceful state. And when that happens, you can start to feel, I guess, more peaceful in your life. So overall, I had a wonderful experience. I'm amazed that I had 25 minutes worth of content to share with you, but it was a lot. If you have any qualms about going, I would highly recommend it. It's not a vacation. It's not like a vacation retreat. I would actually liken it more to being in prison for 10 days, but the only prison you're in is the prison of your own mind. And if you can, I guess, liberate yourself from all of the things that you're attached to, then you will become free. That's the premise of it. I still have a lot of work to do, so I am planning on going annually if I can, and continuing my practice daily and continuing my sits weekly or twice a month, whatever I can do, because the level of peace that I've started to feel is amazing. Regardless of whether this technique is perfect or it has flaws, as I'm sure it does. But for now, this is working really well for me. So if you have questions or you're wondering any other components of my experience, feel free to shoot me a message. This is something I would love to share with more people. But if you get a chance, you can head on over to dhamma.org and you can sign up for your own course, DHAMMA.org, dhamma.org, and sign up for your own 10-day Vipassana course. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will keep you guys posted in the future. Thank you.